relationship success support hangout. And tonight we're going to be discussing gender roles and specifically female gender roles. We've got two Kims with us tonight. Thanks for being here, guys. Their names are both Kim, so there will be some confusion. Just bear with us. We are going to be discussing personal experiences in relation to gender roles, as well as how we walked through our particular experiences. We're going to be discussing the specific thoughts that we dealt with, the emotions we dealt with, the judgments. How did we support ourselves through these points? Maybe points that are still affecting us now, and what points we see we could still change, and discuss potential solutions for those. So a little bit of context. This is the second hangout on the gender roles topic, and the previous hangout covered the basic construct of gender roles, the basic definitions and things like that. So as a quick recap, gender roles are essentially generalizations and stereotypes that are held by a large number of people that define or judge what males should and should not do and what females should and should not do. So in the example of the female, the housewife, the caretaker of children, liking fashion and clothes shopping, and liking ponies and the color pink, all of those things would be kind of stereotypes specifically related to gender. And the male examples would be males are big, strong, emotionally closed off. They like cars and toys and games and things like that. So let's jump right in, and we're going to start off with some personal experiences in relation to gender roles. So we're going to go to first Kim, right next to me. start here. So Kim, would you like to tell us a little bit about how you experienced yourself in relationships as well as out of relationships, specifically relating to your self-definition as a woman in society? You may begin.
So in terms of gender roles, should I hold it? So I haven't personally felt a great affinity towards being a housewife, or even being like a normal girl or female in terms of, you know, the stereotypes that we all have of how girls behave or how girls act, what girls do. You know, so I personally went into the route of resistance, which means that I actually made it a point inside of myself to not go there and to not be that stereotype, because in my mind I had defined those, you know, gender roles and stereotypes as something that's very limiting and that would limit me as an individual and as a person. So it felt like it would be very constricting. So I just, you know, resisted actually allowing myself to do or be anything that would make me that stereotype. So that was basically my experience in my life. Should I also talk about how I walked through it, or?
Let's focus for the moment on, were there any specific kind of thoughts that you were aware of that would come up within you in relation to this particular point? Any kind of self-judgments or judgments of society or judgments of other women? Oh. Okay. Hold on. There we go. We'll just excuse our camera malfunction. Hold on for a moment. Is that coming to stay there now? It is like wanting to fall off the whole time. Hold on, I'm gonna move it. It sits further on the screen. Okay.
Should I keep this going?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so basically, yes, there was judgment in terms of, looking at women in general. When I looked at women, and specifically women that for me fit those kind of standards or gender roles or stereotypes, then I would kind of think, oh, they're stuck in that stereotype, they're stuck in that image, and I'm not. So I would kind of feel better about myself in comparison, because I would pride myself in the fact that I've chosen to not be that stereotype. So in a way, I would feel superior to what I would see in other women.
Okay, cool. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your experiences in this particular context?
Yes. Okay. So for me, I grew up in a family that had very, well, not extreme, but defined gender roles, where the woman, my mother would do the cooking, the cleaning, the grocery shopping, the laundry, everything. My father would go out and work, and so those I find fit the generalities that you were talking about. When I started dating and getting into my own relationships, the gender roles were never really an issue until a specific relationship where I was with somebody who kind of expected it more. So all of a sudden I was confronted with somebody who wanted me to be in this role. And that's when all of a sudden I found out that I did in fact have judgments. I did have ideas that I didn't know about, because in the past I hadn't confronted it. Now all of a sudden I have somebody who's expecting me to be this woman, and I'm like, whoa, like I didn't realize that I had negative judgments existed within me about this role, thinking that it's less valuable. It's something to kind of, I never experienced this judgment towards, for example, my mother. It wasn't an issue then, but it's like something happens when you're young, you accept your reality. And then as time goes by, you're exposed to society, you're exposed to media, you start developing these ideas. So what had happened to me over time, I realized I had created an idea, a negative idea towards the woman's role, where I think, it has a lot to do with, for example, money. The woman staying at home, taking care of the children, taking care of the household, doesn't get paid. She has less power. Whereas the man goes out and makes all the money, has all the power, therefore is more in a position where he can be the decision maker of the household. So I think that was like the main thing for me, was this power play. So when I was in this relationship, I struggled with that, and I kind of had like Kim, the same resistance of like, I don't know if I want to like play this role, like. So I'm confronted that quite later on in life.
That's actually a very good point to bring in, the point of that power play between the male and the female within the assigned gender roles. Because now we're seeing a lot of women wanting to break out of the stereotype, but within trying to break out of it, they've created a sort of a rebellion against it. So, Kim, did you also experience this this power struggle in any of your relationships, or did you witness it happening at any time?
Well, what I saw from my parents was that specifically my father would sometimes say certain things wherein he would use the stereotypes as a way to kind of diminish my mother. So for instance, whenever my mother would say something that he didn't like to hear, then he would say things like, oh, she's whining again, or women always whine. Women are always emotional. So he'd roll his eyes and kind of make that generalizing statement about women in general, or about my mother as a woman. So I picked that up as a child, and that's actually what I integrated in myself as something where I made my decision that I never want to be seen in that way. I never want to be in that position where I'm being diminished in that way. So for me, that meant that I can't ever be those stereotypes, or be seen as those stereotypes, because that then means that I will be diminished or seen as in a diminishing way.
So what I'm seeing here is like a theme of self-definition and self-worth that is coming from these gender roles, or the rebellion toward the gender roles, or of the gender roles. So whether you reject or accept the gender role, you're most likely still going to be defining yourself according to it in some way. It's not going to be a self-definition or an exploration of yourself to find out what it is that you enjoy, or what you're good at, without having these judgments of should and shouldn't, or rebelling against the judgments of should and shouldn't. Because whichever way you look at it, it's still a judgment. It's still, I don't want to be like those people, or I do want to be like those people. So that's quite an interesting dimension that is coming through here. Let's open a little bit the aspect of wanting to fit into a gender or into a particular role as a woman. Now, we could take a very simple example of a girl in school, for example, wanting to fit in with her friends and seeing that as a girl she should be enjoying things like shopping. So let's take me. I don't really like shopping for clothes, but because I wanted to have one or two girlfriends that I could spend time with and enjoy doing things together with, I would go and do things like shop and pretend that I like it so that they wouldn't judge me. Okay, this whole, it's either we're judging ourselves or we're worried that someone else is going to judge us. And in a relationship, a lot of the time wanting to fulfill a gender role comes in again with a self-definition, but it comes in terms of wanting to be validated for your self-definition. So it becomes like, if I want to be a good housewife, or a good girlfriend, I should be doing these things. And if I do these things and I'm recognized for doing these things, then I will have value to my partner, and therefore I will have worth, I will have value, and I can love myself finally because someone recognizes me and values me. So, excuse the cat for a moment. And she's blocking our screen. All right, so so that's the other aspect of fulfilling the stereotypes. And the kind of thoughts that might be associated here is I want to, something like, I want to show my worth, I want to be good at doing this, I want to make them happy, I should do this and that. You guys have any other ideas of particular thoughts that someone might be going through if they are trying to fulfill a particular role that they feel like they should fulfill?
Well, for me personally, if I were to feel like, yeah, I have felt that way, and it just brought up resentment. And, I don't want to do something just because I should, or someone tells me to, or society expects it of me. Whenever I have done that, I have felt resentment, and it's not been a constructive thing. So, and also, when you think about the gender roles in a relationship, where we are in society now, most people have to work. So this female gender role is now falling on top of the woman working. And so that's kind of where, when I was confronted and with a situation where I was being kind of influenced into playing that role, I was doing it on top of having a job. So that's kind of the woman doing the man's thing to help the functioning of the household monetarily, but also filling the woman's role as well. And yeah, so I definitely, from what you described, have experienced that, and have felt resentment as the biggest thing that came up for me.
Okay, cool. that's a very cool dimension to go into. Do you have anything to add?
Well, for me, it was a point of whenever I would want to show my partner a certain behavior, to kind of show him that I'm a good woman. You know, it was like, okay, if I do this, then he will see that I'm one, normal, like every other woman. So I fit into the construct of being a woman, and two, I'm a good woman because the things that I'm supposed to do as a woman, I am doing those things, and I'm doing them well. You know, so for example, you know, cooking, making a meal when he comes home, or you know, also a funny thing that we women do is like when there's a baby around, go like, oh my god, you know, we're supposed to be good with babies, and when your partner is there and they see you being good with a baby, then their whole, you know, male construct activates in terms of, oh, she's a good woman, she will bear my children because she is good with babies.
Yeah, it's true. I experienced that too, especially with like cooking and like, which I enjoy, but hoping that he's going to enjoy the meal because, you know, then he has this lifetime ahead of him of my wonderful cooking, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. All right, so those are some pretty cool starting points for this particular discussion. Let's take it to the next step of how did you guys start working through your particular judgments, self-definitions? So judgments will be self-judgments as well as like fears of what other people will be judging you about, and that should word again, what you think that other people think you should be doing, what you think you should be doing according to what other people think should be happening, all of those things. So how did you start working through these particular constructs?
Okay, so when I was living according to the shoulds, you know, the resent came up. What I did was I just changed my perspective a little bit. I didn't change exactly what I was doing. I changed the way I changed why I was doing it. So instead of doing it, I mean, these are practical things that need to get done: the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, everything, the grocery shopping. So it's not like I could just stop doing it and you know.
Yeah, I'm a woman, hear me roar.
Yeah, it has to get done.
Yeah.
So the change in perspective that I had was, instead of doing it because I should be doing it, I did it for me. Like, I kind of took it on as a challenge. How well can I do this? How organized can I be to save myself time so that I have time for all the other things in my life to do? How much money can I save because I've, you know, grocery shopped, I've like found the deals, I've planned my meal plan, and I really kind of embraced the role to see how well I could do it. And it's funny because it turns out it's quite difficult. It is like not easy to plan a meal. I mean, especially working, but also if you're not working, also if you are, it's just difficult as it is, because it's a lot of planning when you're planning a budget and meal, you know, timing, everything. If you have children, you can add that huge challenge. And if you have a job, that's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
So it was a lot more difficult to do it properly, you know, than I expected. And for me, it actually, when I changed my perspective a little bit like that and did it for me instead of doing it for society or for the man, I actually started building confidence. I became good at it, you know, good at finding bargains and planning my meals and saving time so that I could do my own thing afterwards. Becoming a better cook, you know, because you have less room for error with the time constraints and everything to screw up a meal and have to do it all over again. You want it to be good the first time. So that slight change in perspective, kind of dropping my judgment and embracing the role, changed everything.
Okay, cool. And would you like to share?
Well, for me, it was kind of a process of self-acceptance that I had to walk in terms of like I would be very focused throughout my life on what other people are thinking of me and how other people perceive me. And then I had that whole thing of I don't want to be a stereotype, which caused me to kind of deny myself a lot of things like dressing up nicely, makeup and hair, and taking care of those kind of things, because obviously that's all too feminine and it's all part of the stereotype. So I'm just not going to go there. Having kind of changed and walked through that tendency of limiting myself based on wanting or fighting a certain expression, like judging a certain expression and then going into resistance about it just because I want to be seen as a certain image or idea because I place value on that image or idea, kind of walking through that has allowed me to have the space and the freedom to do things as a self-expression. For instance, now I will dress myself and I will wear makeup and do my hair in a way that is enjoyable for me. And it will sometimes end up being feminine, but then it will be just my expression and I'm not judging it. And for instance, I've also developed quite an affinity towards baking cookies and stuff like that, which I suppose you could see as something feminine, but now it's like a self-expression. And as I was enjoying it, I was noticing that, hey, I'm doing this as a point of self-enjoyment, whereas before I would have kind of judged that about myself and suppressed those feminine aspects of myself. And now it's like coming up, so it is kind of a part of me now.
Cool. So the general theme here is stop judging yourself and stop worrying about what other people think. And it's I know in this day everything is about appearance and should be, and what you should look like, what you should be doing, the people you should be seen with, and all of that. But I mean, we need to really ask ourselves if that's how we want to live, because look at where it's brought us. Look at the experiences that we are creating in our lives based on all of these shoulds. And also the aspect of fighting against the shoulds, of saying, I will never do what you say I should do. I'm going to prove you wrong, that I can be whatever I want to be. Within all of these judgments, one way or the other, the point that is missed out on in all of them is that we are not giving ourselves the space to find what we enjoy, to find what we're good at, to express ourselves, to explore who we are, to explore the world around us, because we're constraining and limiting ourselves within all of these judgments of what I should or should not be doing, or rebelling against all of these things. And I mean, again, it's a point of, is this really how we want to live? Because, I mean, I think you guys can agree that none of these experiences are pleasant. It's not like, woohoo! Yeah, I'm so happy rebelling against society. Yay! I'm so happy denying myself. I mean, right? There's not much of that. That's really like, wow, this is life. This is what this is what life should be like, and that's a should that should stand. So now we haven't had any questions yet. It makes us quite sad. So let's see if there are any other points in this construct that we can open up that we maybe haven't discussed yet.
I have a point.
Okay, cool. Go for it.
So a point that I found was, like we were saying, this is a practical stuff that has to get done. There's no kind of way out. I was talking about how I kind of embraced it and I took it on. What I found was I took it on. It was a cool experience, but it wasn't sustainable. Like you said, I was like, it wasn't enjoying it. It was too much for me. It was too much work. It was taking up too much of my time. I worked on it. I got it down to a point where I was saving time, saving money, but I felt like the weight was too much on my shoulders. And I almost took it from a challenge to trying to prove something, proved it to myself, built confidence, but then it was kind of like, okay, now what's the next step to bring this through to a solution type thing? And I found that it was kind of difficult to face the solution that I found for myself, which was asking for help, assistance.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I found was, okay, this is too much for me, but I'm the woman, so I should be able to do this all. And I was like, okay, so this isn't sustainable. This is too much. I need to now go to my partner and ask for assistance. And which is cool because that's kind of like breaking the gender role a bit, but it's practical. Yeah. And so the kind of theme within that is you just got to do what's practical. I mean, you both work, you both have different schedules. Your life experience is going to be unique to your couple, your relationship. So kind of function within that to find a way where both partners can contribute so that they can have that space to explore their self-expression. And not one of them has to have too much weight on their shoulders. So what I would do would be, for example, if I knew that my partner was going to be home before me and I had a dinner to prepare, I would give a call and say, hey, can you chop these vegetables? Can you prepare this? So that when I get home, it's going to be a little bit easier for me to, do my woman stuff. And so that was cool. That was really amazing. But the surprising part within that is that I found it so difficult to ask because I felt like, well, now I'm not doing my role,
Yeah.
And but to me, that was the ultimate solution, was ask support from my partner, kind of break up the tasks. I have my qualities and my skills, and he has his qualities and his skills. So where can we both, contribute?
Yeah, that is a very, very important aspect to consider within, not only in relationships but in life in general. That absolutely there are things that need to be done, and not all of these things we're gonna really enjoy doing. However, we can develop ways that the tasks can be divvied up between people in such a way that maybe you're doing things that you like a little bit better than other things, and it's the same for your partner. In the previous hangout, we discussed this particular topic of sharing how in the relationships examples that we were using, one partner would do the laundry and the other one would do the dishes, as an example, because that's kind of what they preferred doing out of the tasks, both of which needed to be done. And this relates to all sorts of areas of our lives, including the working world, because there are a lot of jobs in this world that no one really wants to do. However, they need to be done. I mean, for example, no one wants to work in sewage treatment, but you got to deal with all the shit, so it has to be done. Someone's got to do it. Maybe one day we'll be able to automate that, but for right now, the human element is required. And there was another. The other aspect is that yes, males and females are different, and there are things that males are typically good at and females are typically good at or suited to. Generally speaking, males are stronger and females are not as strong. However, that doesn't mean that we should constrain ourselves within these facts of life. If there's something that someone enjoys doing and they're good at doing it, then don't hold yourself back just because you feel like you shouldn't do it, or don't go and do something that is a part of your idea of what your gender should be doing if that's not something that you really enjoy doing. Unless obviously it's something that needs to be done and you are practically able to do it. That's a different story. Did you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I do. Because I think like because of these gender roles and the way society's evolved, guys normally know more. This is a generalization. They know how to fix the car. They know how to do like the boy stuff. I think it would be cool, so if that's the case, then yeah, they'll do that. But it would be cool if you're in that situation to be like, why don't you show me? Like I want to know how to fix my engine, change my oil, and like I didn't even know how to change my oil. And then when I broke up from a long-term relationship, my engine blew because I didn't even know I was supposed to change my oil. So as a practical point, but also as a cool point to kind of expand the gender roles, kind of merge them a bit, just keeping it practical would be to explore the other side, like dabble there. Go if your boyfriend or whatever, your husband is going out to fix the truck, go and have a look and poke around. Or if you're in the kitchen, invite him and be like, the other day I taught a guy how to slice properly a certain vegetable. There's a certain mechanic to cooking as well that the woman playing the woman gender role can invite her husband or boyfriend into, and he can explore that too. And instead of even paying any attention to these roles or giving them any value whatsoever, cross the line, like be brave, cross over and explore the other side.
That's a really good idea. I think that anyone, whether you're a guy or a girl, that is a very cool challenge for yourself and for the people in your life. Step outside your bounds, step outside your comfort zone, get to know things that you never considered before. And maybe find something that you actually do enjoy. I think that's definitely a very cool suggestion. All right, let's see, were there any other topics that we would like to cover? Well, it's half-past, so we could go for another 15 minutes. I mean, if we've covered all the topics, then that's it. Let's see.
Maybe the emotional aspects involved. Like,
okay, can you give an example?
Like while Kim was talking about like wanting to stick to your role in how you're doing things, like you want to, for instance, make a whole meal and cook the whole meal because you're the woman. Like, I've seen a lot of times and also experienced that women can get very stressed out and tense when things are like going wrong, or they don't actually have enough time, so they compromise themselves and they're rushing from the store to home and taking care of the children. It's like they want to kind of do all of those things because they're seeing themselves in their mind as the main sole responsible person for all those things, which can lead to like a lot of just stress and eventually emotional outbursts, where also a typical female reaction in that situation is like taking it out on your partner and going like, well, I'm doing everything and you're not contributing, and that where you just feel and see that those emotions are just coming through in her voice. Everything's just becoming too much. And that's something that happens with a lot of women, and it's also happened with me. And I've seen that in my mother and in my stepmother and just a lot of people. So that is also a sign that you are putting too much pressure on yourself, and you need to start considering more practical ways of doing things rather than trying to do things out of a belief system and out of ideas that you have about what you should be doing or how things should play out based on certain ideas that you've given value in your mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, so think about the woman who's overburdened, and who is she taking it out on? Who is she taking it out on? Her kids, her husband, her family? This is supposed to be the people you're supporting and you're supported by. And because of these gender roles, you're now creating like a toxic environment. You're creating conflict and friction in your family because of a role, because of an idea and a belief system and a value system. So I think it's a really good point, and I think that just goes to kind of encourage the breaking of the boundaries, because the boundaries are not constructive in the family unit.
Yeah.
And we need to kind of get our courage up and break them down for peace, in the home, for creating a supportive environment instead of a toxic environment. And to realize, like, so these emotions that I'm feeling and these things that are keeping me in this gender role are destroying the most important thing. So I think that keep it practical, and instead of taking all the burden on to yourself because of the gender role, reach out and work towards kind of getting over this whole societal construct we've created. I mean, the world is changing immensely, and they don't really have a place anymore. It's really difficult for a woman to even be a stay-at-home mom because her husband's able to afford to support a family, a one-income family. It's becoming more and more rare.
Yeah.
So these gender roles are becoming more and more difficult to maintain and causing more and more friction, like Kim was talking about.
That's some very cool considerations there. We do have one comment here. It's in Spanish, so I'm not entirely sure what it says. Or wait, is that French? Oh,
What is it? Un monde de filles.
A world of women.
okay. I'm just gonna quickly translate this.
That's it. Oh,
Uh,
my chain.
I think there's a typo in there, so
well, we're not entirely sure
I
what
think they're asking us to correct in there.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Not the kind
We'll
of camera
consider it.
really checking. Okay. All right. All right. So, why did I delete it? That's even more frustrating. There we go. Okay. All right. So, I have one point to add to the point of changing these gender roles because they're not sustainable, and that is the emotional experience that that might be connected to this gender role. Because it's now, yes, when you're looking at it as a construct here in front of you, it is a gender role. But when you're applying it within yourself in your own life, it's more of a self-definition and a self-belief and a self-judgment of you are assigning your self-worth if you fulfill this particular idea that you have or this particular judgment that you have about yourself and what you should be doing. So when you're dealing with things like self-definitions and self-judgments, the first step is recognizing what it is that you're dealing with, and seeing that where did this judgment come from? Where did the self-definition come from? What is triggered it? What maintains it? What particular thoughts are involved within it? A lot of these thoughts are going to include the word should. So those are specific ones to look out for. But when working with self-definitions, it can be quite a challenging construct to walk through within yourself, because breaking down your self-definition kind of leaves you in this vulnerable state. Like, if you take that away from yourself, then who are you? What's left? How do you know what to do thereafter? Because in a way, your self-definition has now defined what you should be doing according to your definition. And when you take that away, where did the shoulds go? There's no more should. So you don't know what you should do. You don't know how to take the next step forward because you don't know which direction to go in.
It's almost like sorry to interrupt you, but cool. The gender role is like the safety zone.
Exactly.
It's like you feel comfortable in there, even if it's possibly creating friction and conflict in your family unit. It's where you're comfortable, and it's almost like this extreme vulnerability to break that down. But the amazing thing about it is that if you break it down and then you go to expand yourself and learn something new, that's like real confidence. That's real, that's something of substance that you've built for yourself now, instead of living this identity that has been created before you that you just kind of slotted into. So yeah, that was really cool. I had not considered that when you were saying that.
That's so thank you for that. And within this point,
like, what do you do once you break that gender role down?
Yeah.
You know, when you're in that vulnerable state.
yeah,
You
so
know what you should do now.
exactly. You now, when you're at that point of not knowing where to go, it's basically up to you to create yourself. And as scary as that sounds, it's actually, when you get there, it's pretty exhilarating. And it's not like you can make any mistakes in that kind of thing, because all you're doing is you're finding out what works and what doesn't work. You're essentially testing different avenues, different paths, and not holding yourself according to any of these judgments or shoulds. You're just kind of letting all of that go and giving yourself that freedom and the opportunity to really investigate and discover who you are and what is possible in the world.
It could be like very humbling as well,
Yeah.
because if you are playing the gender role and you're good at it, you could create like quite a big ego.
Yeah.
You know, being like, well, I'm a good cook and I can do this and that, and like you have now this whole ego aspect that if you are to venture outside of this gender role, you have to start like down at the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, you have to let go of that ego and really humble yourself to learn something new. But in that humbling, it doesn't have to be scary because you're just learning.
Yeah.
You know, it's just being open to learn. And so long as you kind of apply yourself in that, like you said, there's no making mistakes. I mean, you're learning, you know, be gentle on yourself, be accepting of the fact that you can be new at something and not know exactly how to do it, ask questions, you know. It could actually be a really cool experience between your partner and yourself if you're just like, teach me, you know, like, I'm open, show me how you do this. I know you do this well, why don't you show me how to do this now?
That's a very cool suggestion. Very, I think, a very exciting avenue for any person to go down to. And
I know, like, for me, that's how I would like to proceed. For people who are already in a relationship, especially longer term ones, it's probably going to be more difficult to challenge the gender roles. So that's the people who are going to need the most courage. And but then also the people who are going to get the greatest reward. You know, it could change their relationship. It could bring in things that they had given up on. But for people who are entering into a relationship, kind of have a fresh start where they can take a moment before they enter into a relationship to decide how they're going to navigate this construct that exists, to maybe nip it in the bud before it becomes something that is in the relationship and now has to be broken down. And, you know, you can avoid that whole issue by deciding before you enter into a relationship to be open and to not, you know, keep yourself in check, that you don't define yourself based on the gender role. You don't put your value there. But you put your value in yourself and everything you're able to learn and you're capable of.
One aspect of this that kind of opened up as you were talking is that aspect of self-judgment that we tend to have when we're learning something new, as if we're not automatically good at something, it diminishes our worth in some way, and it makes us less valuable. It makes us not as, it just makes us worse off, and apparently somehow that makes us bad. So when you start looking at, okay, I'm learning something new, obviously you're not going to be good at it. The whole concept of judging yourself for being in a new situation and making mistakes and not being good at it, I mean, that is how it goes. That's what happens when you're learning something new. And judging yourself, you're literally just sabotaging yourself, because you're not giving yourself the opportunity to learn and move forward and evolve and get better and develop that skill. So that's an aspect that popped out.
Yeah, and you can also be living an example for your partner.
Yeah.
So like if this is something where we're just talking from the perspective of the woman, but the man's got his whole gender role thing, he's in the same position, but in the male gender role. So if the woman takes that initiative to take that courageous step, she could also, you know, really surprise the guy and kind of inspire him to now also be able to drop his barriers and his values and definitions and kind of take your lead. So you are putting yourself in a very vulnerable position that you've judged as low maybe and less value, but really you're taking like the best, biggest, highest step, which is kind of acting as a leader for the benefit of everybody.
Do you have anything to add?
Well, maybe that, like, the scary thing about doing that might be for most people that you feel that you're alone in it. But as Kim mentioned, you know, your partner's most likely going through the same thing. And I know that that was the case with me and my partner, actually. And it was always a relief whenever either one of us brought up the point of, you know what, I'm just going to be honest about this. You know, I've been doing this and that because I feel like I have to. But to be honest, I don't entirely feel comfortable with that. And then my partner or me always said like, oh, you know what? It's the same for me. It's like, it was always the same for both of us. And that was always such a relief to then be able to, you know, create something new together by, first of all, being honest about how things are now and how things were in the past.
No, that's a very good point. That honesty is a very good, very important aspect of developing anything in a relationship. You have to come from a point where you can really share yourself, what you're going through, with your partner, and vice versa. Though those particular points we will be covering in future hangouts in detail. For now, does anyone have any closing remarks, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think that from my experience with the gender roles, I liked finding out that the gender role of the woman is actually quite challenging and difficult, and I now feel it's an honorable role to play, and that it's very valuable. And even though this role isn't something that you get paid for, doesn't mean that it is less than or devalued in any way whatsoever. It's just as important. And to be a woman in the workforce, I mean, if you're a woman and you think that your value is to go out into the corporate world or the workforce, I think that that's cool if that's what you want to do, but don't do it just because you're rebelling against this apparent, you know, gender role that is like the woman barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Maybe you want to be pregnant and barefoot in the kitchen, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's got its own value. And you know, just find where your enjoyment is. You can get good at it, get good at the gender role, develop it as a skill, but don't limit yourself to it. And that's how me personally, I would like to proceed in my future relationships. It's a skill that I can develop, but it's not the only thing that I have the option to do.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Any last thoughts?
Well, I agree with that. It's like very nice to kind of gain that respect for the female and to let go of those kind of judgments or ideas that the female role is somehow less than the male role in society.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I think that this has been a pretty cool discussion, and I think we've covered basically all of the points for the female role. If anyone watching does have any other particular points they would like to discuss or any particular questions relating to this topic, you can post a comment or email. All of the information will be in the video's description. Thank you very much, guys, the Kims, for being here. And thanks for watching. And we'll see you next month for the next installment, which will be the male gender role and I will be looking for male guests. So if you're interested, also please email or leave a comment. All right, thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.